Today we're talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the long-anticipated sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse that is 4.5 years in the making. And in this film, Miles, dealing with the challenges of being Spider-Man, faces a new vengeful villain, all while getting wrapped into a multiversal adventure. I thought the first movie got a lot right with the character of Miles Morales and Spider-Man. There are several things I thought they handled well. The animation is groundbreaking. It looks beautiful. It's one of the best looking animated movies of all time. It's hilarious. It introduces us to the multiverse, unlike other movies that promised that in years past in the MCU. And sadly, that never came to fruition for those movies. But Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse did a lot of great things with the multiverse, and it made me excited to see what else they could possibly do in this film. With that being said, I was very excited for this sequel. I had no idea what to expect, but did have relatively high expectations. And as of right now, I think there are many great aspects of Across the Spider-Verse, but along with those great aspects comes several buts at the end of every single one. I don't think there is a perfect aspect in this movie other than maybe the animation, which again many are calling a perfectly and beautifully animated movie. Some are saying this is the greatest superhero movie of all time, and I guarantee you a lot of that can be credited to the animation itself, which I can admit for the second straight movie is jaw-dropping. When you thought the animation reached its peak in the first movie, no, this movie takes it a step further. There's like 50-something animation styles compiled into this one epic animated movie, and it's breathtaking to watch. I'm not surprised that Sony pulled this off coming after the first movie, because the first movie went far with the animation, and I knew in the sequel they would want to take it one notch up. And they did. It's visually striking. This is an animated spectacle. But when it comes to the story, I don't find this movie as riveting or as enjoyable as the first film. Unlike the animation, the story takes a back seat to the first movie. The movie took a while to get its gears into motion, and it's not really until the second half where this movie gets started. From there, the movie ups the stakes, the story begins picking up, and you're engulfed in this superhero epic. And this is not really a spoiler alert, considering the movie was originally titled Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. We all knew this was going to be a two-part story. And therefore, with a two-part story, part 1 ends with a cliffhanger, which angered a lot of people. Listen, I hear the complaints. This is an incomplete story, but at the same time, think about it. Some of the best movies are incomplete stories. Many people refer to The Empire Strikes Back and how that movie ends with a cliffhanger. Well, the same thing goes for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It ends with a cliffhanger, and a really good one. But funny enough, like I said in my quick review of the film, we once again have this Pirates of the Caribbean-esque story where the first film is its own story, and then the second and third films are connected stories. The second movie then ends with a cliffhanger leading into a big finale in the third movie. Well, that's exactly how this trilogy is structured. Into the Spider-Verse is its own separate story, and then Across the Spider-Verse is a sequel to that story with an entirely different plot that connects to the third story, giving us one giant conclusion. Personally, I'm not upset about that. I'm okay with how this movie ends. No spoilers, of course, but it seems to me like the biggest problem for most people is the ending of this movie, because we don't get a finale like we all thought we would. So I think it's a good thing. A lot of other people weren't a big fan, but I'm curious what you guys thought, if you thought the finale was a bummer or if you're okay with how it ended. Anyway, like I said, it does take a while for this movie to get going. It doesn't become a great film until the second half. That's when we really get into the nitty-gritty. But the first hour of this film isn't that interesting. I was never invested. At times, I was checking my phone. I was waiting for us to get into the multiverse, and it takes a long time to get there. Some may like the stuff in the first half of this movie. Others will find it boring. I'm one of those people that was not the biggest fan of what we saw in the first half. It was a lot of comedy, a lot of family drama, and a lot of scenes that felt like they were repeating themselves over and over again. I also wanted to talk about the movie's main villain. I'm not going to spoil who it is in case you haven't seen the trailers. I, for one, had no idea who this movie's main villain was, so I won't spoil it for any of you who also don't know. Part of me liked Across the Spider-Verse's villain because he's a nobody, and he's also linked to the first movie in a very funny way. However, the other part of me didn't like this villain because his character is basically just the film's comic relief. Every time I tried taking him seriously, the movie just gave him another joke to spew. And I get it's a kid's movie, but after a while, it gets annoying and it feels like I'm watching an MCU movie. But this is not supposed to be an MCU movie. This is supposed to be a Sony Spider-Man movie. So when analyzing this movie from beginning to end, there is a lot to talk about, and there's not enough time for me to talk about everything in this video about Across the Spider-Verse, just because of how long this movie is. I'm sure they could have trimmed the length by about 30 minutes. If you cut out half of the first act of the film, that would have saved us so much time and gotten us into the best parts of the movie right away, instead of just beating around the bush and keeping us in New York City with Miles and his parents and this weird comic relief villain. The animation does look great. There's an awesome new character introduced in this sequel, and the second half ups the stakes to the level of a movie like Avengers Infinity War, and it ends with a great cliffhanger. So there is a lot to like about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is a good sequel, but I'm not as high on this film as many others are who consider this the greatest superhero movie ever made already. If it wasn't for things taking forever to get rolling and such a weird villain, I'd probably like this movie just as much as the original. I'm giving Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse a 7.5 out of 10. Okay, so now that I've returned from my trip out to Pittsburgh and have provided my full in-depth review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I'm curious to hear all of your thoughts. What did you think of this movie? Do you love it? Do you think this is the best superhero movie of all time? Or were you disappointed by this much anticipated sequel? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know down below in the comment section. And of course, as always, if you are new to my channel, click that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.